Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Alton on this 24th day of July, 2022. Thank you for joining us today, whether in person here in the sanctuary or viewing the service streaming live at 10 a.m. Central Time or watching it later on video. We are glad you're part of our community. I'm Jerry Johnson. My pronouns are he and him. I'm one of the worship associates who help with Sunday services, either as a speaker or a liturgist. I welcome each of you into this community of hope and transcendence. Here we seek wisdom beyond our own experience. Here we open our loving minds to the mystery of wonder and moral imagination. Here we transcend the day-to-day of our lives to seek for truths both meaningful and sustaining. Here we seek to offer a loving message that provides wholeness in a broken world. We are Unitarian Universalists. We open our service with a prelude by our accompanist, Joy Heft. An important ritual in the Unitarian Universalist faith is the lighting of our chalice. Hence, Deutsch, an Austrian artist, first brought together the chalice and the flame as a Unitarian symbol during his work with the Unitarian Service Committee during World War II. To Deutsch, the image had connotations of sacrifice and love. Unitarian Universalists today have many different interpretations of the flaming chalice, including the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope. If you are watching elsewhere and have a candle or chalice, please light it now as we all join in singing the unison words projected on the screen. We hallow this time together by kindling the lamp of our heritage. Our opening words are by Reverend Kathy A. Huff, who has served in ministerial positions in UU churches in Massachusetts and California. Spirit of life, be present with us this hour. Join us today as we gather in a wider search for truth and purpose. In this quest, may we greet one another with open hearts and minds. May we inspire each other to consider new questions and seek deeper meaning, and may we cultivate wisdom and compassion. Let all who enter this sanctuary see a welcome face, hear a kind word, and find comfort in this community. May all that is done and said here today be in service to love and justice. Please rise as you are willing and able for our first hymn, When I Am Frightened, number 1012 in the Teal hymnal. It is a tradition here at First UU Alton to place each service within the context of the larger principles that we as UU share. While we are a religion with no requirements of creed or belief, we do have things we support overall, and the service today entitled The Change We Hope to Bring brings to mind the second UU principle, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Our reading is by Roshi Joan Halifax and is entitled, Yes, We Can Have Hope. Roshi Joan Halifax is an American Zen Buddhist teacher, ecologist, civil rights activist, hospice caregiver, and the author of several books on Buddhism and spirituality. She writes, A good part of my life has been spent relating to situations that might be deemed hopeless. As an anti-war activist, a civil rights worker, a caregiver of dying people. I've also volunteered with death row inmates, served in medical clinics in remote areas of the Himalayas, where life is hard, food is scarce, and access to health care is nil, and worked in Kathmandu with Rohingya refugees who have no status anywhere. You might ask, why bother? Why hold out hope for ending war or injustice? Why have hope for people who are dying or for refugees fleeing from genocide or for solutions to climate change? As Buddhists, we know that ordinary hope is based in desire, wanting an outcome that could well be different from what will actually happen. Not getting what we hoped for is usually experienced as some kind of misfortune. Someone who is hopeful in this way has an expectation that always hovers in the background, the shadow of fear that one's wishes will not be fulfilled. This ordinary hope is a subtle expression of fear and a form of suffering. Wise hope is not seeing things unrealistically, but rather seeing things as they are, including the truth of suffering, both its existence and our capacity to transform it. It's when we realize we don't know what will happen that this kind of hope comes alive. In that spaciousness of uncertainty is the very space we need to act. Too often, we become paralyzed by the belief that there is nothing to hope for, that our cancer diagnosis is a one-way street with no exit, that our political situation is beyond repair, that there is no way out of our climate crisis. It becomes easy to think that nothing makes sense anymore or that we have no power and there's no reason to act. I often say that there should be just two words over the door of our temple in Santa Fe: show up. Yes, suffering is present. We cannot deny it. There are 65.3 million refugees in the world today, and only 11 countries are free from conflict. And climate change is turning forests into deserts. Economic justice is driving people into greater and greater poverty. Racism and sexism remain rampant. But understand, wise hope doesn't mean denying these realities. It means facing them, addressing them, and remembering that what else is present, like the shifts in our values that recognize and move us to address suffering right now. Do not find fault with the present, says Zen Master Kazan. He invites us to see it, not flee it. The Czech statesman Václav Havel said, hope is definitely not the same thing as optimism. It is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense, regardless of how it turns out. We can't know, but we can trust that there will be movement, there will be change, and we can be part of it. We move forward in our day and get out the vote, or sit at the bedside of a dying patient, or teach that third grade class. As Buddhists, we share the common aspiration to waken from suffering for many of us, for suffering. For many of this aspiration is not a small self improvement program. The Bodhisattva vows at the heart of Mahayana tradition are, if nothing else, a powerful expression of radical and wise hope, an unconditional hope that is free of desire. Dostoevsky said, to live without hope is to cease to live. His words remind us that apathy is not the enlightened path. We are called to live with possibility, knowing full well that impermanence prevails. So why not just show up? As part of our weekly worship service, we take time for the expression of joys or concerns. Today we have some battery lit candles up here in front. Invite anyone who would like to light a candle representing what is in their heart or thoughts to come forward, practicing social distancing, and light a candle, leaving the lit candle on the tray. Please come down this aisle on your right and leave by the aisle on your left. Paul and I would like you to know that as of Wednesday, July 20th, Lila has finally been legally adopted by us. It's been a long process. It's been a lot of paperwork and ups and downs, but it's finally legally ours. As I think many of you know, I have experienced the loss of my wife. We've been married for 64 years. She's been a very good wife, but
they had many medical problems, and it was actually a good thing to find. Also, I had another that student, and that is I'm going to be moving out of this area at the end of August to go and live in New Hampshire with our son. Yeah. But we just cannot be at this distance anymore. So I'm really grateful to him for having me come and live with this family in New Hampshire.
We'll have a moment of silence or us to commemorate all our joys and sorrows. Our second hymn is From You I Receive, number 402 in the Gray Hymnal. Please sing it through twice. The sermon today is entitled The Change We Hope to Bring and was written by the Reverend Phil Lund. Reverend Lund has over 25 years of experience with serving congregations in the areas of faith formation and spiritual growth, first as a religious educator in Bloomington, Indiana, New York City, and Chicago, Illinois, and most recently as a congregational life consultant working for the Mid-America region. Reverend Lund writes, Back in August of 2016, I made a Sunday morning visit to one of the small rural congregations you can find in any of the 13 states covered by the Mid-America region. I don't remember what I preached that morning, but I do remember a conversation I had with some of the founding members during social hour. Does the UUA have some material that explains what Unitarian Universalism is? They asked. If we had something like that to leave around town, maybe people would find out who we are and they might want to come visit us. I agreed with them that Unitarian Universalism might benefit from an easy explanation of what it is. For years, we were often confused with the Unification Church. Are you the ones who do those mass weddings? And we are still often mistaken for Unity, the Missouri-based spiritual community dedicated to advancing spiritual awakening and transformation in the world. I didn't necessarily agree, however, that leaving pamphlets explaining Uism around town would attract people. You see, interest in religion has been steadily declining in America since the turn of the century. Fewer people are affiliating with faith-specific tradition, and of those who do, fewer are members of a church, synagogue, or mosque. And even fewer of those people actually attend worship services on a regular basis. But I told those founding members I would check into it and see what kind of materials the UUA had to offer. So the following day, I got in touch with Carrie McDonald, who was at that time the UUA's outreach director and is currently serving as our association's executive vice president. Carrie told me that outreach means more than leaving literature around town. In fact, he said he had recently published a blog post on the subject. When you talk about what your congregation offers, Carrie wrote, think, join our cause. instead of join our club. Show what your congregation does, how it helps people live better lives and make a better world, instead of only talking about what a great community you offer. Carey went on to say that the key to successful outreach and changing religious landscape, particularly with the unaffiliated or spiritual but not religious sets, will likely be to speak to why people would want to show up in the first place, not just what can keep them there year after year. Describe what we offer for learning, yearning, and working for our values. We can't assume people are already looking for a church on Sunday mornings because, in fact, we're competing for their time and attention against sleeping in, taking a walk, soccer practice, Facebook, and brunch. We have to focus on what we do as UUs, not just who we are. Recently, I was reminded of those words, join our cause, not our club, when I ran across another blog post, this time from Dan Hotchkiss, who has served as a Unitarian Universalist parish minister, denominational executive, and senior consultant for the Alban Institute. In his post, Two Kinds of Customers, Dan says, a church is more than a buyer's club, a co-op that delivers maximum religious benefit to members at the lowest cost. A good congregation puts its shoulder to a bigger wheel, transforming lives in ways no one can predict, in harmony with the congregation's purpose. Our success is measured by the good we do, not how satisfied we are. Like Kerry McDonald, Dan Hodgkins is telling us that a congregation needs to be more than a club, an organization whose purpose is to deliver spiritual benefits to its members. To compete in this world of the unaffiliated and the spiritual but not religious, we have to focus on the good we do. Now, I know that this talk of customers and competition might be a little off-putting, but ultimately we're talking about the survival of our congregations and our association in a culture that is less and less interested in traditional religious communities. No matter when your congregation was established, 10, 25, 50, or 100 years ago, we need to be thinking about what it will take for your congregation to still be there here in another 15 or 20 years. To get us thinking along these lines, Dan Hodgkins turns to management consultant Peter Drucker, who suggests asking a question that can, in faith-based institutions, be a little shocking. Who is your customer? Nonprofits, Drucker says, have two kinds of customers. The primary customer is the person whose lives you hope to change. A soup kitchen's primary customer is a hungry person willing to be fed. For a suicide helpline, it's the desperate person willing to receive support. A university serves many customers, including students, consumers of scholarly research, and the community around it. Nonprofits also have supporting customers, which Drucker defines as volunteers, members, partners, funders, referral sources, employers, and others who must be satisfied. Supporting customers include everyone whose support you need in order to change the lives of primary customers. It's tempting to say simply, our primary and supporting customers are the same, our members. Dan Hodgkins says that kind of thinking is the mark of a congregation in decline. Most of your supporting customers are members already, but if your congregation succeeds, 10 years from now, most of its members will be new. You need to keep the current members satisfied, but in planning for the future, a top priority must be your next 20 or 100 or 500 members. In fact, most of your primary customers have yet to cross the threshold. Here's where Kerry McDonald's invitation to think join our cause instead of join our club comes in. According to Dan Hotchkiss, critics of American religion say it caters too much to the likes and dislikes of its members, enhancing lives at the expense of the real mission of the faith community, which is to transform lives for the better. Any congregation that is focused on enhancing the lives of its members, its supporting customers, is at the risk of becoming irrelevant. Join our club. Only those congregations that are focusing on transforming the lives of those in need, its primary customers, are likely to survive. Join our cause. The good news is, as Dan Hodgkiss points out, supporting customers make it possible for congregations to change lives. Sometimes along the way, they find that their own lives are changed as well. So you might ask, what does it take for a congregation to transform lives? To answer that, I'd like to share with you a short story by Reverend Sam Wells, vicar of St. Martin in the Fields Church in central London and visiting professor of Christian ethics at King's College, London. I want you to imagine that you're in a very busy place, a bit like I'm standing here now, and you're in a big city and you see a homeless person. I want to suggest that there are 4 things you can do. The first thing is to decide that homelessness is a terrible problem in a big city in which you're standing, and to go away and form an organization that will deal with homelessness, perhaps remove homelessness altogether. Form a board of people like yourselves who are determined to do something about it. Then the second option you have is to get a whole large group of people together to work on the issue, including homeless people themselves, but also local businesses, the local authority, and other charities, perhaps other churches to work with you. The third option is to actually go up to the homeless person, maybe buy them a cup of coffee and sit down, discuss the local football results, the local plans for the Olympics, and whatever is on the mind of everybody else. And the fourth option you can have is to go away and go home, back to your apartment or back to your house, and to blog about homelessness and say, too many people use the wrong language about homeless people. They shouldn't refer to the homeless. They should refer to people as individuals with their own stories. And I want to suggest that there's a name for each of these 4 approaches. The approach where you see the problem of homelessness and go away and set up an organization, that's what I call working for. The second approach, where you've brought together a body of all different kinds of people, including homeless person themselves and local business and so on, that's what I call working with. It's a little bit like community organizing. In the third approach, where you sit down and have a cup of coffee and discuss the Premier League in England or the league in the football games in Amsterdam, that's called being with. There's no working going on. You're simply enjoying being and sharing the company and conversation of another person. And then the last approach, where you go home and you write your blog and tell everybody else that they use the wrong language about homelessness, that's called being for. Now, I want to look a little more closely about where these 4 different approaches have things in common and where they differ. The 2 that end in for, working for and being for, what they have in common is you never actually need to talk to or meet an individual homeless person at all. What they have in common is that you think you already know the answer and you understand the homeless person only by what they haven't got, a home. They haven't got a home. You've got lots of intelligence and ideas and networks and friends, and you can fix it in the case of working for you. Fix it actively by creating an organization that solves problems. In the case of being for, you fix it verbally by making sure the whole of society talks and therefore thinks the way you do. Being with is the only approach that puts homeless person at the center of the story and doesn't assume that the person is a problem that either I or they need to fix. It looks into the mystery of the reality of that person's life and cherishes the person's life for its assets and for what is good about it, where the skills are, where the flourishing life is, and doesn't start with its deficits. The fact that that person simply doesn't have a home. Sam Wells goes on to say that according to his calculations, 90% of the ministry of Jesus was being with. In fact, Wells has said that with is the most important word in theology, and I couldn't agree with him more. Being with is a no strings attached way of being present to another human being, and it is a key to transforming lives in ways no one can predict, as Dan Hodgkiss puts it. Now I'd like to share with you another story I think is a perfect example of being with. It's from KSL TV, a television station in Salt Lake City. Tai Chi Lessons Bring Exercise and Hope for Salt Lake City Homeless by Alex Cabrera. Salt Lake City. Thanks to volunteer instructor Bernie Hart, morning Tai Chi lessons at the Salt Lake City Library bring exercise and hope to this city's homeless. Blank stares is what Hart said he was met with when he first talked about setting up the program. It was like they couldn't understand the event and the ideas, he said. 5 months ago, Hart went to the library knowing that many of the city's homeless also went there in the mornings. You didn't know what to expect. We started with an idea and nobody, Hart said. But nobody soon turned into one, then a few, and now as many as 40 people come in the morning to practice Tai Chi as their morning workout. For many, it allows them to simply have a time in their day where they get to focus on something other than being homeless. Fred Davis came to Salt Lake City 2 years ago and is among the city's homeless population. It's still kind of hard, to get by day to day, he said. We're really exploring an idea about how motion and movement influences how we think about things, Hart said about the program. But the morning lessons offer the chance to take the homeless person's mind off his trouble, at least for a few moments, and help him get a good exercise. It gets you moving and your body feels wonderful after you finish, Davis said. Of course, Hart knows that Tai Chi isn't going to solve the city's homeless problem. That's going to take more than morning exercise, and he just wants people to feel better about themselves. They see changes and something happening, Hart said about his class participants. And for the homeless, change can lead to hope. Sam Wells would agree, I think, that this is a perfect example of the kind of being with he talks about in his story. That news report, by the way, was from February 2017, and I'm happy to say that Tai Chi at the Public Library in Salt Lake City is still going strong. In fact, the Salt Lake City Tribune published an article about it on May 13th of this year. That article has some additional information that makes me love this program all the more. We find out, for example, that everyone who participates is greeted with a warm cup of coffee and a breakfast burrito. After Tai Chi, everyone turns in a ticket that they can exchange for $2 or a pack of hand-rolled cigarettes. We also learn Bernie and Marita Hart, the couple who started Salt Lake City Street Tai Chi, are 81 and 79 years old, and they've been doing this for 7 years. That means they were both in their 70s when they started this program. And we learned that Bernie and Marita, along with Lisa Height, who helps brew the coffee and cook the breakfast burrito for Tai Chi in the mornings, are members of First Unitarian Church in Salt Lake City. They say that together, they got the church to let them use the kitchen 4 days a week to prepare the food and coffee for Tai Chi. Here are some lessons about outreach I think we can learn from this story. One is that a few people can make a big difference. First Unitarian Church in Salt Lake City has 290 members, yet only 3 of their members are regularly involved in Tai Chi in the mornings. But a congregation of almost any size could offer its members the same kind of support. Another learning is that age has nothing to do with it. Bernie and Marita are both around 80 years old, yet they've made it a priority in their lives to be present, to be with others. One more lesson, they call it Salt Lake City Street Tai Chi because that's where the people are, on the streets. That's where Bernie and Marita are showing up, being with, transforming lives. I'm beginning to think that's really what's at the heart of any sort of outreach effort. I can't tell you what I preached about that morning in 2016 when I visited one of the many small rural congregations I work with, but I do remember exactly what I said in another sermon I preached later that year. It was in December, just a month after the 2016 presidential election. There was a feeling among many religious liberals and spiritual progressives that the most vulnerable people in our society were becoming the scapegoats of the political movement led by the president-elect. I was participating in a worship service at our association's headquarters in Boston during the annual gathering of the UUA's Congregational Life staff. The focus of my message was that Jim Wallace, the president and founder of Christian social justice organization Sojourners, calls the Matthew 25 test. Wallace asks, how do we decide where and how to focus our ministry, energy, staff, time, and gifts? How do we be good stewards of our calling? I think that Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 through 46 provides the answer. The key moment in the passage is when Jesus says, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you gave me clothing. I was sick and you took care of me. I was in prison and you visited me. Just as you did it to one of the least of those who are members of my family, you did it to me. Speaking in Washington, D.C., with a group of clergy and families protesting against Trump's cabinet appointments, Wallace said that this test has become a simple pledge. I will protect and defend vulnerable people. I repeat that phrase. I will protect and defend vulnerable people. And when I asked my colleagues to say it, then I asked my colleagues to say it with me. I will protect and defend vulnerable people. I realized that this pledge was more about being for, as Sam Wells might say. And while I appreciate the sentiment, I would ask that we make a different sort of pledge today, one that might guide us as we think about how we want to reach out and share our values with the world. I will show up and be with vulnerable people is a pledge I would make today. It is the same pledge I would ask of every congregation that wants to do more than a club to make. We will show up and be with vulnerable people. And that is a cause I would not hesitate to ask others to join. So may it be. Our last hymn is Lean on Me, number 1021 in the Teal hymnal. Okay. As Mary passes the offering basket around, I offer the gentle reminder that this community of faith is supported only by your giving. Stewardship is more than just financial donations, but it's also about donating time and talent to help our church. If you can't write a check, please help our church survive and thrive by offering your time to help maintain the building, help on committees, or help with worship. Please donate as you can with your time, talent, and/or treasure. All are needed for our church to prosper. You can also mail your financial gift to First Unitarian Church of Alton, Post Office Box 494, Alton, Illinois 62002. Or you can give electronically by searching for First Unitarian Church of Alton on the Givelify app or via the link on our webpage. As well, you can give through PayPal if you prefer. If you're willing to donate your time and talent, please contact a board member and let us know what you can do to help. Give what you will and what you are able, for you are a generous people. Please join with me in our offering prayer. May this offering equip us to inspire love and seek justice. We have a few announcements. If you're a visitor this morning and would like to know about the church and/or receive our monthly church newsletter and weekly info flyer by email, please fill out the visitor card found on the visitor information table in the worker room in the fellowship hall and put the card in the basket provided. Also, if anyone needs a name tag, please fill out the blue name tag request card that you'll find at the visitor table and put the card in the basket. There's a collection of lost and found items on a table in the hall. Take anything you want. The items have been there for a couple of years. So, okay. As our service comes to a close, I invite you to join me in reciting these words as I extinguish the chalice. The light of truth and meaning cannot be put out. We are keepers of this flame until we meet again. Our closing words are entitled Bring Happiness and were written by Barbara Cheatham, a retired Unitarian minister. Now we take our leave. Before we gather here again, may each of us bring happiness into another's life. May each be surprised by the gifts that surround us. May each of us be enlivened by constant curiosity, and may we remain together in spirit till the hour we meet again. Go in peace. Joy will now end our service with a postlude.